Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast that looks at cycling purely from an aesthetic and superficial point of view. I'm your host, Alex, joined by my co hosts, Warren and Tony. Guys, how's it going this week?
It's going well, going well.
Yep, good.
So this week we have a huge episode. We have a very interesting interview with two of the three founders of a brand that we love, that we've talked about several times on the podcast. So we have Charlie Stewart and Jack Howker, founders of the British cycling brand Albion, that are going to be coming on the podcast to talk about the history of the brand, their design ethos, and just more generally using cycling as a way of enjoying the outdoors, and how they came about to coming up with a brand that helps you do that. So we're very excited about that interview because, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of our favorite brands. If you listen to the top 5 kid brand episodes, several of us put them in our top 5. So we were very happy to talk to them earlier this week so that we could bring the interview to you. But this week, we also have the results of our giveaway that we have been doing in collaboration with Peppermint Cycling, another cool brand out of Montreal here in Quebec, in Canada. So we were doing a giveaway with Peppermint where we asked our listeners to give us submissions of the weirdest thing they have worn in order to stay warm while cycling. And maybe one thing we should have specified when we did the giveaway was, what's the weirdest thing you wore to stay warm while cycling? Because we got some entries that had nothing to do with cycling and actually gave us a good laugh. But unfortunately, these entries can't win the giveaway since it's not cycling related. But we have a bunch of good entries, and what we're going to do is we're going to read maybe our top 3 entries that we had, and we'll determine the winner on the podcast, and that person can get in touch with us. So we had some good ones. So for example, Skylar, a listener, she reached out to us. She said, I had homemade booties, they didn't work, and also tinfoil didn't work either. And she sent us a pic of her homemade booties, and it was basically a pair of camping socks with holes in them that apparently she used as shoe covers. So I thought that was pretty innovative. Thank you, Skylar, for your submission.
I think the concept's there, and it seems like it would make sense, right? Because when you get a pair of, many years ago, I think everyone wore the sort of defeat ones, but now Panorama does them, and fingers crossed, it seems to be very popular. But it just looks like a sock, and you think to yourself, "Oh, just a sock with a hole cut in it." So the concept was there. I understand that, but I guess there's something about the material and the weave and stuff with those that stand up to the elements and the warmth a little bit better than just your regular wool camping sock.
So that was pretty good. Interesting colors too on the camping socks. Another interesting entry that we got was from Stephanie. So Stephanie writes to us. She says, entering my winter cycling kit story, I was cycling in Jasper, Alberta in the Rocky Mountains. First ever 200-kilometer ride in 2013. It was cold. It started to rain, and I had to descend a mountain. So she sends a pic. It's her in a garbage bag, like you see people hanging out at these football games. They're wrapped in a garbage bag. So this is Stephanie. She said, I found a garbage bag and thought I was in luck. Then I tucked it in and made it look even better with my short socks, because I guess she was new to cycling. She was wearing ankle socks. She didn't know they were in the Canal yet. And so there's an even better picture, and it's her descending there, and basically the garbage bag sort of fills up with air. And she says that she was, in fact, not Arrow. Yeah, so that was a pretty good one as well. Garbage bag to stay warm. Thank you, Stephanie, for your entry. And we have a last one that I'm going to read. This one's from MJ. She says, not sure if it qualifies, but thought I'd share it anyways. So the story behind this is basically I didn't want to wear toe covers just yet because I didn't think it was going to be cold. Turns out I was wrong. 30 minutes into the ride, and I can't feel my toes. Stopped at a Timmy's. So for our non-Canadian listeners, Timmy's is a coffee shop chain here in Canada. Stop at a Timmy's, found some tin foil, but this was the best they had to offer. Besides poking a hole in the bag, it worked. Stop at Starbucks and use 2 bags. So you know these bags at Starbucks that they give you if you buy a pastry or something. So basically she put 2 Starbucks pastry bags on her toes, She says that was even better. She didn't have to wear black overshoes over her overpriced white shoes. So that was MJ, her submission for the What I've Done to Stay Warm giveaway. And so, MJ, you are the winner. The Starbucks bags just did it for me. So congratulations, MJ. Please get in touch with us by DM on Instagram. Send us your contact info, and we'll have Peppermint ship you a winter kit to your size, just so you don't ever have to wear Starbucks bags again. So thank you, MJ, and thank you everyone who participated. Okay, so moving on to our first regular segment where we talk about news releases in the world of cycling style and cycling fashion. Um, pretty big news actually in the last few weeks that came out. This is more of a cycling fashion industry news than a specific release, but it was basically Rafa let it be known that Simon Mottram, the founder and longtime figurehead of Rafa, is now stepping down as CEO of the brand. He's been in the role for 17 years. He's actually the founder of the company, Rafa, that he founded in London in 2004. Apparently, he's going to remain very close to the brand. He'll continue to serve on the board of directors. But essentially, he thought it was the time to pass the torch to Rafa. You'll recall that Rafa, I think a few years back, I'm going to say 2018, Rafa was bought by private investment fund that belongs to the heirs of the Walton family, so the Walmart dynasty. I think they're big into cycling, and they decided to do a private equity deal and buy essentially Rafa. And the CEO who's going to be replacing Simon Mottram is a gentleman named William Kim. He's a Korean American with extensive experience at the intersection of tech and fashion. So he's going to take over as CEO from the start of 2022. So I think this is interesting because it gives us an opportunity to talk about kind of where Rafa is in the industry right now. Where do they stand? I think when Simon Mottram started in 2004, it was a very different landscape, very different marketplace than it is now. Guys, what did you think of that news?
I mean, I first want to give, we made our criticisms, we made our positive comments about Rafa, and it's a lot of fun. But obviously, a big shout out to Simon as the founder, and like you said, that landscape was different, and I think that this podcast sort of wouldn't be possible without Rafa, because we wouldn't have all these other brands and all these people interested in it. So a fond farewell to someone who's truly made an impact on cycling fashion. In terms of sort of moving forward, yeah, I mean, I think Rafa's kind of got his niche of design and people like it, and there's stuff they like, but sometimes I don't know, they probably have great technology behind it, but I feel they don't advertise it the way I'm noticing a lot more brands in their space starting to really like push in their advertising and their media about the technology they're using. So I'm wondering if Kim is going to come in and start to think more deeply about how to either actually integrate it into the clothing or start pushing that as a way to sort of say we're using the latest technology.
I agree with what you said up front, Tony. Like, clearly, yeah, this podcast wouldn't exist without Rafa. Though the way the brand has been going the last few years, I haven't been as keen on. But I mean, the main thing that really jumped to my mind is isn't he basically just living the dream? He created this brand, it made it really successful, sold it out. Like, I think that's what we want with this podcast. 17 years from now, the Walton family buys us, and then we can retire and be board members of Cycling Fashion Week Empire. I don't know. So good for him. I genuinely appreciate what he's done for cycling apparel. I'm glad, I was able to move on from my Fano eBay bullshit kits that I first wore when I started.
Yeah, I just want to say I did hear, I think, on the Cycling Tips podcast, because he sent out an email to industry people about his resignation and his moving on. First off, we didn't get the email, so hopefully it's coming soon. But in the next round of someone quitting, but just said he plans on riding his bike more. So sort of to Warren's point, he made a whole bunch of money, starting an iconic brand, and now he's retiring to ride more bikes.
But you know who's killing it here though is the Walton heirs, right? Because I actually just checked. I said 2018 earlier was the time they bought Rafa. It's actually 2017, and apparently it was after a somewhat difficult year for Rafa. So probably what they did is they came in, at a time when earnings were depressed for whatever structural or cyclical reasons, got a good valuation on the deal, bought the equity, turned it around, And now COVID happened, and Rafa's business probably exploded during COVID as more and more people got into cycling. So the demand kind of became structurally higher for high end cycling products like what Rafa does. So these guys, the Walton family, they're probably killing it. But just want to say, I was also interested when I saw the release about Simon Mottram leaving. It said he founded Rafa in 2004, and honestly, I had no idea he founded it in 2004. I would have said 2010, 09, 11, something like that. So it just goes to show that when people start brands, they slog it out for quite a while. But
Mhm.
the competitive landscape right now is so different than it was back then, and it's like Rafa was so far ahead of everybody else at that time that they really had first mover advantage. But now it's not so much that Rafa's gotten worse. I'd argue they've probably gotten a little bit better or stayed the same, but it's that everybody else caught up to them basically. And what you guys said is true. Without Rafa, there's no Cycling Fashion Week. There's no Panorama Studios. There's no a variety of other cool brands that came up later. But I think that's the challenge going forward for Rafa is how yeah, you still have that first mover advantage. You were early on the sort of fashionable, desirable cycling apparel trend, but how do you keep that up going forward in a much more competitive marketplace? For myself, anyway, I used to buy a lot of Rafa, but now that marketplace is so diluted that it's really tough for me to direct my dollars towards Rafa. But hey, I wish them the best because they did a lot for cycling fashion. Okay, so the next item we're going to talk about. So this was actually really interesting. So there was this charity gala in Monaco. So you're going to ask, okay, what the hell are these guys talking about charity galas in Monaco? But it was called the Bee King Charity Gala that happened in Monte Carlo, and a variety of pro riders came to this sort of red carpet, black tie event that, as I mentioned, was held for charity. And we'll put some photos on Instagram so you can see what we're talking about there. But also you can see Cycling Tips essentially featured it on the website and on their Instagram account, and a variety of riders like Elia Viviani. There was Primoz Roglic. There was Jakob Fuglsang. There was also Geraint Thomas, whom we'll talk about. Anyway, they were there on the red carpet with their significant others, showing up to this charity gala. And what we're going to do here is we want to talk about their style, their off the bike style, because some of them were, let's just say, they look better in a cycling kit than they do in a black tie outfit. So, guys, what did you think of that?
I mean, for me, it's not surprising. Pogacar looks the best. Like, you know,
Oh, sorry. Fugelsang looks the best by far. Pogacar does not look even
what do
close.
you mean? He's got that
Everyone
red bow
else,
tie.
no, no.
His
The suit
sleeves are a
jacket's
little
too
short.
tight.
Yeah, that's fair.
The pants are too long. The whole tailoring is off of it. And I think, except for, I'm sorry I had to jump in and ruin your thing. Except for Fugelsang, all these people need new barbers.
I don't know. Yeah, no, never mind. I'm looking again.
Geraint Thomas looks like a schoolboy who is wearing a suit for the first time, who like some sort of teenager who's going to prom. His hair, like he looks like he just got out of bed. His tie's too short. His shirt sleeves are way too long relative to his jacket sleeve, which is too short. His jacket's too short. His pants just don't fit him. His mustache he's got that sort of teenage boy kind of mustache who isn't quite shaving yet, but probably should. And his significant other actually looks very well put together. She's very elegant, but you wonder, like, this guy, did he just get out of bed to show up to this gala? And it shouldn't be surprising because that's the guy who wears these old kind of Oakley, the white ones that the white Oakleys that he's probably had since 1992, or I actually don't know when he was born. But that was an interesting look from our boy G.
So I'm going to give, I got two comments I want to give it. I think Fugelsang looks the best. The hair looks good. Tim Wellens looks great, but he's got a real issue with his tie. It's not cinched properly at the neck, and then it's coming sort of below the collar at the back. So that's something, just double check in the mirror, Mr. Wellens, before you go. And then Tor Hushoff, he looks good, but he must have bought that tux when he was like winning green jerseys in like 2009 or 8, and just never got a new one, because that is a very, like, tux are sort of supposed to be timeless, but there is slight variations that kind of keep up with the trends. And this does not look like it is a a contemporary tux. So he looks okay, but I mean, I think he could just update the tux a little bit. But Wellens and Fugelsong, kudos to you. The rest of you, hit me up. I'll tell you about barbers, at least in the Toronto area.
His tux, it looks like Pierce Brosnan era James Bond. So
Yes,
that's like 1990s.
yes, exactly.
I do want to say Luke Rowe has a. I'm not a huge mustache guy, but his mustache is pretty good.
He looks Australian in that picture, so no good.
So I don't know how many of our listeners have, wear jackets or suits to work, or I guess in COVID, fewer and fewer people have done that. But there's one thing in tailoring that is actually one of the worst things. It's called collar gap, and it's basically where your jacket sort of hugs your neck. And if you have a gap there, it's a surefire sign that your suit doesn't fit you. And very often that's not something that a tailor can adjust. It simply means that the size is wrong. And Elia Viviani, he's got a collar gap the size of the Stelvio there. It's insane. And you could tell he looks really uncomfortable. And again, these guys look way better in kit than they do in tailoring. And I just want to say one last thing. Obviously, Geraint Thomas's hair is a disaster, but Jakob Fuglsang and actually some of the other guys as well, they've got that perfect sort of spiky Euro hair like that people in Europe seem to have from the 1990s that they've never really stopped having as a haircut. And Jakob Fuglsang has the same haircut as Wout van Aert, who actually was not at that gala, or at least from the pictures we can't see that he was there, but minus the frosted tips, which to me means that Wout van Aert has the perfect rendition of that haircut, basically the spiky Euro hair, but with the frosted tips in the front. And I think I might have to rock that look in 2022 because it is just the perfect Euro hair, and I love it.
Oh, love it. Love Fugelsang's hair. The only him and Tim Wellens are the only ones that don't need to, like, I don't know, punch their barber in the face or something.
And I just see their hair, and it makes me want to go to like a European rave party or like with some aggressive techno music. It's so Euro. It's incredible.
If we could afford the rights to it, we would get Sandstorm as our intro song.
I was gonna say that's probably why Wout wasn't there. He was at the Darude concert.
Maybe we should do a GoFundMe with our listeners so that we can buy Sandstorm as the introduction music to Cycling Fashion Week.
It's probably more affordable than we think.
I don't know, man. That's a big song.
Okay, moving on to the next release we want to talk about. So this is interesting. I think it'll spark some interesting debates. So there's a brand called No Bull. They released an indoor cycling shoe. And when I say it's an indoor cycling shoe, it's because it has massive ventilation holes in them, sort of like Crocs, if you will. But it's a very thin cycling shoe. They made it in black. And essentially, you use it on Zwift or on Trainer Road or whatever you're using indoors.
Peloton is their target market, but
Peloton is what they're targeting, but you can put Shimano clips or Look as well, cleats there. But that, I guess that's the idea there, is the ventilation on these shoes. They're pretty sleek design. Again, they're black. There's like little dots all over them. There's like a Velcro that says No Bull, but they're actually a lace-up shoe as well. But all along the side, you've got these massive ventilation holes. Very, very thin shoe, like I said. They retail for about 237 Canadian dollars. So that would be roughly 175 US dollars. Guys, what did you think about that?
yeah, I mean they're No Bull's it's not a cycling brand, so they're coming from the sort of fitness space. Obviously, that's why I said targeting Peloton customers who are sort of getting into that and they want to be clipped in. And 90%, not even 99.5% of the time, I don't give a shit about practicality. I want to look good. But the trainer is such a miserable experience, and I don't, find Zwift is cool, but it doesn't make it that much less miserable. That any way to be a bit more comfortable, and my feet overheat. So honestly, I'm kind of for these.
Tony, like these are Crocs, and I think we risk ruining the entire credibility of this podcast if you're saying you're for these. These are horrible. I hear you on like the trainer's miserable and you don't want to overheat, but I've got a pair of Mavic warm weather cycling shoes that breathe perfectly well, and they're white. Number one, that's good, but they also breathe amazing. They don't look like fucking Crocs. So these are horrible. Get them out of my sight.
So Crocs has SPD shoes now, right? You can put SPD, Shimano SPD, cleats or clips on your Crocs. That's a thing now, apparently. So I probably wouldn't buy this because it's not a cycling brand, and I don't know. That's just how my dumb brain works. It needs to be a cycling brand for me to buy something to cycle. But I love the idea. Like when I'm done, say an hour long Zwift session with Sweet Spot or whatever it is I'm doing, my shoes are literally drenched in sweat. Like I'm just a sweaty guy. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. And I think that's actually a great idea. The ventilation. Now, do these look good? I don't know. They're kind of sleek, like for indoors. I probably wouldn't wear that outdoors, but for indoors, I think they're probably good enough. But to me, cycling brands should 100% copy that. Like I need to see Bont, Shimano, CD come out with indoor shoes, and the thin model from Mavic that you talk about, Warren, that's not good enough for me. I need the holes in them. I need the full ventilation.
Yeah, yeah.
I think to me this is a good innovation. I think the cycling brands will get on it, and I'm going to buy it at that point because I think it's a fantastic idea.
Shimano actually already does have an indoor shoe, which in my opinion,
But does it have holes?
it doesn't have holes like this, but it looks
I
way
want
better.
holes.
Yeah, I want holes. I'm with Alex. I want the holes. I want the I need as much ventilation. It gets really hot.
I want the fan to blast air on my feet.
Nike also put out some trainer
Those are
shoes
hideous.
last year.
Those are even uglier than the no bull things.
Not a cycling brand. Not a cycling brand.
Wow, I mean, there's some history there. The question is,
Livestrong.
what does Lance wear on when he's Zwifting? Does he wear the indoor Nikes, or does he wear no Nike at all because he's had some issues?
He posted a picture of himself on Zwift, and I think he was wearing the We Do kit. I didn't see what was on his feet though.
Whoever pays him the most. All right, welcome to our next segment. And today, as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, we have some very special guests joining us. We have two of the three founders of Albion Cycling, Charlie Stewart and Jack Hauker. And Albion Cycling, as I think many of our listeners know, is an apparel brand that Tony and I specifically, are quite big fans of. And they make cycling gear for cycling in British conditions. We'll let them elaborate a bit on that, but it's a brand with a lot of clean aesthetic and some really nice performing technical pieces and some unique little pieces like the burner. We're really excited to have you guys on the podcast. Tony and I are quite big fans of the brand, so thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And yeah, likewise, I don't know how, when we came across the podcast, I mean, I guess maybe we chatted a couple of weeks ago, and it's been great to listen to a couple of episodes, and it's cool what you guys are doing. I think like speaking on this topic, it's quite refreshing for us actually, because it's almost like a sort of customer focus group. You know what I mean? It's like hearing what's actually going on the ground. Like we obviously we know to a certain extent what some people say, but I'm sure that people just probably say nice things to our face, but maybe they chat shit behind our back. So it's good to hear what's being said about the brand and other brands as well. Actually, it's just interesting to hear your guys' take on stuff. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. I think that we've said only good things, and it's all honest about you guys because of the kind of big fans we are. But we've definitely made a few comments about some of the other brands and things we didn't like, which was the goal, to be as honest as possible. But we'll see if we're asking those companies to come on for an interview if it bites us later. But we want honest reviews and honest comments. We're not getting paid for this, so we just want to have fun and say what we like.
Great. Well, now we've done an interview, you can say what you like afterwards.
yeah, exactly. We'll say what we really think later. Can you both just start by telling us like just about your backgrounds in cycling, like how you got into it, maybe what made you passionate about it, or you don't have to like give us all the details, but we're just curious like what drew you into cycling?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tricky one, cycling, because I think everyone starts cycling when they're a kid, and sort of so you can kind of trace it back as far as you want. But for me, I think really it was like when I got into my 20s, getting back into cycling properly through road cycling. It just became a massive escape. We were living in cities. I was living in London, working in a city, and cycling just became that sort of gateway to go outside and just have a bit of freedom. And Charlie was someone who, like Charlie and I met when we were at university, actually in Leeds. And I remember finding out that Charlie was cycling, and Charlie was thinking about a cycling brand, and me and him started going riding. And I think that just became, like for a lot of people, just a big obsession for us. At that point, we were going away the whole time. It was our lives, really.
Yeah. So like we knew each other from university, as Jack said, but we weren't into riding at that time. And then it was funny, like we left and then we were in London. We both lived in London, and I actually saw Jack. I got into cycling and I saw Jack just like riding down the street on a road bike, and I was like, yo, I like screamed after him. I was like, how could like you like cycling now? And we kind of agreed. We agreed to go for a ride together. And I think like that was around 2012, which was like a really like quite a seminal year for cycling certainly in the UK. And we talk about this quite a lot in terms of it being a bit of a sort of one of the ways in which we started really thinking seriously about doing a brand was cycling suddenly through the Olympics, through Bradley Wiggins winning. Basically, Wiggins won the Tour and like featured prominently in the London Olympics in the same year. So suddenly, like cycling was like massively like on everyone's radar. And so, people getting more and more into it. I think we were already at this point, like, we're following like the classics a bit, and it was just like these kind of really romantic races with all these like stories and history. And then suddenly it just like blew up in the UK. And then so
I remember we met at Roubaix and went for a few drinks.
Yeah. So we one of the first like long rides I ever did was to ride to Roubaix from London to watch the race, and these guys were out there, so we met up. And like so, yeah, I think like it was just like after university, we were all just kind of looking, for something to keep us busy, keep us fit. And cycling just kind of came more and more into our consciousness. And then like pretty quickly, like we got into riding, and it was just like, well, there aren't really many brands that are very good. Do you know what I mean? It's like you looked at like the outdoor industry, or you looked at like even like menswear, I could list 30, 50 brands that were like amazing and that I wanted to own stuff from. And I was there, and it was just like, and without trying to pour shade on like any other brands, but it's like, I think like Café du Cycliste was like one. It was like there's a brand called Café du Cycliste. Like how is this like one of the best brands? Like, and like, I don't want to, that's not to like pour shade. I actually think that they've got like a really original thing going on, and like fair play to them. But I just remember just like it was the name in particular. I was just like, surely like the third best brand in cycling isn't called Café du Cycliste. So yeah, we just kind of had the crazy. Well, we arrogantly thought that like we could do something ourselves. Like no experience of like cycling in terms of the industry, fashion, making stuff, like nothing, literally.
You guys were just, it was more, you were interested in style, but you weren't designers or sort of in that realm. It was just purely an interest that you knew you wanted to look better on the bike and you had to do it yourself.
There's a host of things. I think like we, a bit like you guys, when we hear you talking about brands and about cycling, like we remember, we used to sit around and do the same thing. Like we were massive consumers of cycling products, and we loved loads of the brands that we liked doing good products at the time. We owned lots of those products as well. But I think we just saw this slight mismatch, I guess, between like the types of products that were being made and the types of riding we were doing. And like a lot's changed in the last 10 or so years. But, for us, we were regularly going away, riding in bad weather in Wales. We thought we were going on adventures. And I guess it was more similar to outdoor brands, like Charlie was saying earlier, like you'd see loads of outdoor brands that were made for those types of conditions. And actually a lot of cycling brands were making really incredible product, but a lot of it was dripped down from Pro Team. It was, very European focused. And I think we just started to get excited about this idea of like, well, the way we were seeing cycling really as more as an outdoor sport. And, we could go away, like there's this place where with the third founder, Rupert, we go away with in Wales, and we go on these incredible rides, for a couple of days and feel like we're in the middle of nowhere, a long way away from London and our jobs. And we kind of, I guess we did want to bottle that bit. Like we were, we thought we were having the most fun you could possibly have, certainly on a bike. And there wasn't a brand necessarily doing that bit of storytelling for us or making those types of products. So I guess whenever we talk about that time, we're always like hesitant to say there were plenty of good cycling brands out there doing really exciting stuff. It just wasn't necessarily exactly the way we were riding. We were riding in Wales.
I was going to say, I remember when Tony and I first kind of stumbled upon your brand, I think through, social media or something. I remember the photos you guys had of, for your lookbooks, and it looked like the photos just looked very like what I imagine British cycling to be, a little wet, a little gray. And yeah, as you,
Also green and sort of beautiful in
yeah,
that British way.
That was a big part of it, to be honest with you. Like, sort of what Jack was saying, but around this time, it was like it seemed as if you needed to, if you wanted to be a cycling brand, you needed to have like a European sounding name, Velo this, Rafa that, and almost like eulogize European cycling, and it was all about the sort of the Alps and the Dolomites and the Tour and all this sort of stuff. And it was like, don't get me wrong, that like inspired us massively. Like, when we first got into riding, we loved Rafa, but like the reality of like how we were riding our bikes like all year round in Britain, it wasn't espressos at the bar. It was like cups of tea, in like a cafe in Wales. And like we kind of felt that there was room for this British brand, which had like a British character. And it was like true to us as well. Do you know what I mean? Like we wanted to do something that was like authentic and it was real to us. And again, I would just reiterate that like naively, foolishly, we thought that we could do something. But I think that carries you a long way at the start,
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that brand positioning piece, like for us, we thought we had an idea, which was, this idea of a British cycling brand. But I think like what did start to excite us was outdoor as an industry, as brands seem so far advanced in the future, like they're making products that you could only dream of, the innovation, the responsibility behind it, like I know sustainability is like seriously overused as a word now, but like these brands to us were like really inspiring, and the content that they produce. And I think now, like as an industry, cycling's moving much more in that direction. But at the time, like when we mapped out like what was available and what we thought we could do, that was like the big opportunity for us. And you mentioned photography as well. Like the third founder of Albion is actually a photographer, so I think that definitely helped us early on, being consistent in kind of portraying the type of riding that we were inspired to do. So that was Rupert with his camera on him the whole time, documenting it.
Yeah, I noticed that sort of very early on in following you guys through social media and then your website. You guys have some great films on there. That's anybody out there, go to their website and albioncycling.com and check out the film section. But that your clothes was sort of part of a storytelling. It wasn't sort of like you were telling the story of cycling and you happened to be wearing your brand of Albion like maybe some others do. It really felt like to me that the clothes were part of that whole narrative of British cycling, of what you guys are riding. And it felt sort of like more encompassing than other brands. It sort of felt sort of less like marketing and more like you were sort of part of the brand.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is like, and we spent a lot of time thinking about this, which is, the brand that we wanted to make and the brands that we really liked were the ones that, did manage to create a really emotional connection with you. You weren't just buying a jacket or a jersey, you were buying into, a way of life, almost like a way of riding a bike, a way of going outdoors. And we spoke at the start, and we still talk about this, sort of, if Albion was music, what would it sound like? And actually, a lot of the music in our films is we make sort of in-house with there's a group of sort of very creative friends that we have that we work with on this stuff. And it's, what is an Albion photo? If Albion was a photo, what is it? If it's music, what is it? If it's a film, what is it? If it's a tea towel, what is it? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's really important to us, because all the brands that we admire, we wanted to live our lives like, through these brands and like have that real like emotional connection. Because if it can be something that inspires people to ride, that's a lot more powerful than just, a jacket to keep rain off your back.
So, like, we're aware as well that our product is our marketing, without being too cynical, like there's a lot of marketing that goes on, and, we do a lot ourselves, but actually when we feel like we're getting it right, when it's in the sweet spot and it really kind of connects with our customers and we get a lot of feedback, it tends to be, it's the product that's making them excited. And, I know, you've mentioned it earlier, but things like the burner, like that was a product, that was an idea, but it was very much, like a great piece of marketing because of it. And it's the same with, other bits and pieces we've done, be it like they're products, but also, they're the things that people connect to, almost like an idea.
On those products specifically, because we did want to ask about those, like, because they're so specific, and like I'm not, I think many of us out there have probably like stuffed some newspaper in our jersey jacket at some point to try to stay warm. But did products like the burner or even the sort of the lightweight backpack, they seem like super practical to me. Like, is that what the idea came from? Just that actual need?
Yeah, 100%. Both those products actually came off. There's an event that we sponsor called the Sonk Coles Challenge, which was actually a part of Rafa Travel for a number of years. And it's this amazing guy called Phil Deeker who he like started riding when he was 50, and he started just doing these like crazy long rides, and he set up this thing called the Sonk Coles Challenge. And the whole thing was you do like 100 coals in 10 days. So like, you're talking 10 days and it's like 200K a day, 6,000 meters a day in the Alps or the Dolomite, these types of unimaginable. I think I remember seeing it on the Rafa website at the time and being like, that's got to be a typo. Like, it can't be that many. Like, and it is, and it's still going. And so we worked, it was a few years ago. He was looking just like for another kit sponsor, and actually through our lead designer, it's a guy called Graham Rayburn, who was actually lead designer at Rafa for 10 years. And he joined us at the start of this year. And he's an amazing guy, like a true sort of visionary. And I don't say that lightly, like in terms of product and like original thinking. And both of those products, are literally his ideas, and they came off those events. It's like if you are descending in the mountains and you need really quick practical access to some insulation, but your hands are cold and you can't fiddle and put a jacket on, what's a quick way to get something up your jersey? And obviously, we've all seen the images of people using newspapers, but taking that sort of thinking and turning it into something actually practical and performance driven. And ditto the backpack. It's like, if you're out for 200K in the mountains and you're out for 12 hours or whatever it is, you need additional carrying capacity. If you're up in the mountains and it starts pissing it down with rain, you want to have your rain jacket on you, but you might need quite a lot of food. It's like very much driven by a sort of practical need. And that's a kind of an approach we try and take with all product. It's like, it sounds lofty, but we want to sort of solve problems, identify problems, and then solve them with kit. Or and that problem might just be that like something's not as comfortable as it could be, or we don't make fashion. This is a podcast called Cycling Fashion Week, but we don't see ourselves as a fashion company like at all. Far from it. We make tools for a job, but at the same time, we want those to look nice.
I think products as well often can have quite an exciting or quite an extreme use case, but then kind of translate very well to more everyday use. So like the burner is a really classic example. Like when we were initially manufacturing that product, we were talking about descending down mountains and using it in that way. But actually, it's one of the most versatile bits of kit that, if you're going out on an early morning, I'm sure like, you guys in Toronto, it's a quick, lightweight, packable bit of insulation. And that's what's quite exciting about it. Like people are taking it and adapting it and using it in all sorts of ways, putting it on different parts of their body. It's the same with the mountain bag. That's a rucksack that's designed for the mountains, but people are using it in ultra racing. People are just taking it around town because it's a rucksack that can literally fit in a pouch in their pocket. You kind of know, I think, or when someone's onto a good idea when like it's got a real world use case that you're trying to solve, but actually it translates really neatly into like riding regularly.
Is that because you sort of think of yourselves as you said, sort of like a more of an outdoor clothing brand? Because like even on your site, like you have those new Zoa pieces as part of your fall winter collection, and I saw those are described as like a new standard in outdoor clothing for cyclists. Do you think this is just coming from thinking of yourselves more as like an outdoor brand versus just a purely cycling brand?
Yes, we definitely see ourselves more as an outdoor brand, and we just think that cycling is the best way to spend time outdoors. And I think the thing with Zoa is, those products are very deliberately designed to be quite versatile. As I'm sure you guys are seeing as much as anyone else, the way that people are riding their bikes is is changing. Even when we first got into riding, it was like you were a roadie or you were a mountain bike guy or you were a fixie or whatever it was. And now, and we count ourselves amongst this group of people. It's like, we have a few different bikes. Could be a road bike, could be a mountain bike, could be a cross bike. We want to do off-road stuff. We want to do road stuff. And you just want really good products like that work for multiple disciplines. It's like you don't need 3 rain jackets depending on like the type of terrain that you're going to ride. You just need a good rain jacket. But I think that's not to say that specific disciplines don't require specific features or products or what have you. But Zoe is quite a good example again of this idea of you could do some really extreme ultra racing in that kit, but at the same time that's going to be a really great everyday jacket if all you want to do is walk your dog in the winter. Do you know what I mean? That's with the sort of the technology and the performance of products available now. That's a reality, and it's quite exciting, to be honest with you, because it means we can hopefully create amazing, really high performing products that are actually like really useful for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, the Zoa jacket specifically is definitely sort of atypical of what you'd see in for most cycling, sort of the hood and the insulation and stuff, and the idea behind it is great that it's more versatile, but because it sort of goes in the face of the rules of cycling, which we talk a lot about here. Did you guys feel that you might be sort of alienating any sort of thing, or you're sort of always on the forefront of pushing your own knowledge of what should be in cycling?
That's I like the question. It's like, because of the rules, do you think you're alienating people? And I think it's the other way around. I think the rules are alienating people. I think the nice thing now is, it's just, we're all doing it. I think, the 4 of us talking are like, we're all leading more outdoor lives. And actually, like Charlie was saying with the Zoa products, like having a jacket that could be amazing on the bike, you can go away for 3 days in non-stop, but also you can go and do other stuff in it as well. Like that's just a really good product. And I think more people are demanding that. Like when we sit around, be it in a product meeting or a marketing meeting, or it can actually be any function of the company. Like we always talk about this idea that we want to help people stay outside for longer. So that's kind of like, we're a cycling brand, we're an outdoor brand, but really, it doesn't matter whether that's someone who's planning on going, and riding for 10 days through somewhere, or whether someone is just going out on, 1 day, but we want to help people do that with great products. And I think that's really inspiring to us. And it's really like, it comes back to how we make films, like early on heading north, a guy called Damien, when he rode to Edinburgh, like that was very much in the DNA of the brand. And I think, those rules that like we're all aware of. And, I think at the very beginning, we used to say you kind of had to be aware of the rules to know how to break them. And, maybe products did seem like they maybe were a little bit more abiding to those rules. But now I think, the fun is definitely in where we can break those in a way which still works so people can ride bikes. Because I think like the rules were a joke, weren't they? They were made.
Yeah.
They weren't made for us all to be too strict with. And I think like making distinct product that can get people excited, that can have that connection where people want to wear it regularly, which is another really important thing. Like if people aren't wearing these products regularly and they're just sat in a wardrobe, then that's not good for business, and that's not good for the environment. Like we want products that people love, so they've got to like them.
It's very early days, but we'd like to think, and we hope that we have a big vision for the role that cycling can play in people's lives as a way of going outside. And if that was just road cycling and road cycling clothing, that would be pretty limiting, and it's quite a small pool. But suddenly, if everyone who wants to go outside is a potential customer, then that's when it gets quite exciting. So I think there is that element too. And again, I think it is just going back to that point I made, which is sort of reflecting what we're seeing in terms of us, our friends, but also the market. It's like certainly over here, gravel and off-road riding is like bringing so many more people into riding than road biking. And it's like I'm not surprised, man. Like I don't know if you saw like a couple of weeks ago, like there was like some guys attacking people with machetes on scooters, like in London. Like people riding their road bikes. There's a place called Richmond Park, which is where a lot of cyclists go. It's like it's a park, and it's about a 10K loop, really well known in London for cycling. And like there's a pro called Alex Richardson who rides for Alpecin Fenix, he was training out there, like a couple of guys on a scooter, like attacked him with a machete and just like nicked his bike. People are scared, man. I probably shouldn't even be saying this. You know, I'm like, it's bad for business, you know, these like machete people on scooters. But yeah, so I think that, you know, that there's a bit of that, like all jokes aside. Certainly in this country, you know, they want to ride off road, perhaps because it's like, it's a safer introduction, or, you know, even if they want to ride on the road as well, they also want to ride a bit off road to mix it up. They might want to ride with their, you know, their partner or whatever it is. So to be honest with you, yeah, like whilst we love road cycling and there's like so much to play for in that area, actually there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening off the road. And so, you know, we're keen to sort of see what we can do in all these areas.
As you're talking about this, like stuff that can be used in all these different situations. As an aside, actually, when I look at some of those products, like the Zoa hooded jacket or the lightweight backpack, right? It actually, I find it gets me like thinking about like, oh, you know, what could I do with that? It's like, yeah, sure, I might not wear that on like a 100K road ride, but if I'm starting to do, you know, 200 and up K rides, which I do, I swear, our listeners might not believe it, but believe me, but you know, it just makes me think about like, oh, you know, what's a kind of like adventure, for lack of a better term, that, you know, I could use something like that on. As you're like designing and thinking up those pieces, as much as we're as an aesthetically driven podcast, we are kind of interested in the technical side because, you know, everybody wants the kit they have to work well. So we did want to just ask a bit about specifically your new like winter and fall stuff. We saw you're using Pertex for some of the more technical stuff, and we just wanted to ask about the decision to use that and how do you go about finding or choosing the right fabric for your more technical pieces.
The decision to work with Pertex, Pertex is a world famous fabric brand that like lots of people don't know about. I think like if you asked anyone to name, you know, name a fabric brand that, you know, they probably say Gore-Tex, and that's probably it. But you know, Pertex has been doing what they do for 35 years plus, and you know they're the sort of the world leader in like, you know, lightweight ripstops originally. So Pertex Quantum, you know, like you guys probably both own a jacket that has Pertex Quantum in it, or like lots of your listeners probably do. They may not even know about it. They're an amazing brand, really innovative brand. It was one of those sort of like right time, right place situations where we were thinking about how we could take Zoa to the next level. We had done the sort of first iteration of an insulated jacket with a hood, and almost like to just test the water for that type of product. We kind of had a hunch that it would be the sort of thing that would be really popular, and it was. So we sort of sat down after that and we like, right, well, our sort of hunch is confirmed that these products, this type of more crossover stuff, could really work. So how can we kind of, you know, elevate that to like almost the sort of the highest level that it can be? And at the time, we, you know, and we still do work with one of our designers. She was actually working in another company, and she was talking to Pertex about another project. And I remember we were sitting around and we all basically just said like, what about Pertex for Zoa? And so we just kind of, it was a bit of a speculative, we sort of pitched them a bit, you know, it was just like, because they're huge in outdoor, but don't really do a lot in cycling. So I think it was at one of those like right time, right place situations where they were quite keen to do something in cycling. They actually do have a history in cycling from years ago, but they hadn't done anything in cycling for a long time. We set up a meeting and we kind of told them about the idea for the range and showed them the brand. And, you know, our feeling was that as a, you know, a small brand, I think if we could partner with someone like a Pertex, you know, an established brand with a lot of credibility and credentials, it could be a real opportunity for us to, you know, express ourselves from a sort of design and product thinking point of view, and also just have that sort of that credibility, that clout of, you know, a really respected, established fabric mill behind us. We knew we could create great products, and we wanted to partner with someone who kind of shared a bit of a vision for that. Yeah, I think the reception to it, it's been really, really positive, and I think, you know, those products are beautiful products. They're like amazing, you know, beautiful designs, and there's so much sort of thinking and technology and design that's gone into them. The plan is to really build Zoa out, and they're a key strategic partner in building that range out.
You guys have, you know, so far spoken about a lot, how your products are tools and the sort of function of it, and you know, where you guys started riding and what the need for it and pushing cycling. But you know, it's also a very stylish company. I mean, that's sort of what drew me to it. You know, I'm sure it's drawn a lot of people that kind of have come from just the social media, maybe not having the awareness until they get the product in hand of how good quality it is. And so, you know, in looking, you know, primarily as your product as a tool for outdoors people and cycling, where does the design come in and the sort of aesthetic? At what point are you guys in the process? Are you making sure that this is a really beautiful piece? Because we've seen, you know, there's a lot of companies that make very practical quality stuff in both cycling and outdoor space, but don't have that same aesthetic quality to make the piece something people want to wear because they feel they look great in it. It's just practical. So you guys seem to kind of marry both very well.
When it comes to, you know, making product, particularly from a responsibility point of view, actually, like, the way a product looks is crucial. I think, you know, people often, we talk about function, we talk about a product being right for the job, you know, use case driven. That's all really important. But actually, if you love the look of a product and it's really comfortable, they're two of the most important things, and it's why you're going to keep returning to it. So yeah, look does come into it. I think the difference is I think we came into the cycling industry, or we were certainly like watching the cycling industry at a time when, you know, new kit day was a hashtag and people felt like they had to have, you know, a new cycling wardrobe every day of the week. For us, actually, what excites us about product is how it works. But yeah, I think we'd be lying to you if we didn't say it was also a lot about how it looks, because we know that's what drives that connection, and we know that's what's going to make you put on that rain jacket every time. And I think we've got an amazing team in place with, you know, our design team in that department as well.
I think, like, Jack made a good point there, which is, you know, we've spoken before on our site about this idea of emotional durability, this idea that, like, actually a really, like, responsible, you know, sustainable, we try not use the word sustainable because I think it's been a bit corrupted. But in terms of, like, you know, a responsible way to make a product is to make something quite timeless, if you can. Yeah, that's something that, you know, potentially doesn't go out of fashion, or that, you know, you could conceivably wear for many years. And it might be that, you know, taste and fashion change and it might come around again, or a lot of that does drive our thinking in terms of, you know, making products for a number of years that remain relevant and wearable. But it's, you know, it's a constant tension, really, because, you know, we want to excite people with new ideas, and, you know, our returning customers want to see new things from us. So, you know, there is definitely an element of, you know, trying to keep it fresh, but it's a bit of a balancing act. You know, like, you probably noticed that, you know, orange is a sort of core brand color, and that's very deliberate. And I think, you know, that an element of that is to do with visibility and, you know, sort of safety out on the road. It's a nice color. So we kind of marry a bit of, you know, core color with some seasonal newness. But even that kind of seasonal stuff is stuff that, you know, we and our customers sort of return to again and again. I think, like, you know, certain types of, you know, print, be they floral or whatever it is, I think those can be quite dated, like quite moment in time, and that feels counterintuitive to some of the thinking that we're trying to put into how we make products.
That's sort of, it was exactly a bit of my thought process in some of the newer Albion kit I bought. You know, I bought a jersey from years ago now, and I bought other stuff at that same time from different companies that were a little more flashy, like you said, in the sort of design oriented stuff. And I just don't wear it. Like, it's out of fashion. But then the stuff I sort of, you know, the simple sort of clean, timeless stuff I can put on. I still feel great in it. You know, obviously the quality's there. It's lasted for years. And so, you know, that I personally, before sort of hearing this from you guys now, had that thought of, oh, if I buy this, I can, you know, I've got a, you know, beautiful steel bike, and this thing, if as long as it sort of holds up, I could wear this for years without feeling sort of outdated. And I also just want to sort of jump in as an example of what I said about your sort of style and function for the listeners who aren't, you know, super aware of Albion and haven't gone to check it out. What they mentioned about their sort of orange, I think, is actually a perfect example where they've used a color that is highly visible and it helps you, but the shade and the tone of the orange and the way they've displaced it in the kit is actually really attractive. So you don't feel like you're a pylon just to stay safe. If anyone wants a good example of what Jack and Charlie are talking about here, is check out their sort of orange pieces.
I actually have the orange long sleeve jersey. I confirm I don't feel like a pylon in it.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for us as well is, like when you're creating a brand, particularly when you're as small as we are, it's really crucial to be distinctive, and I think that's something that we've battled with a lot along the way. Like how you are distinctive essentially in a category with loads of brands, and I think one obvious way to do that is by maybe like over designing things and using those kind of patterns that might be distinctive today, but actually being an enduring brand, hopefully for a long time. For us, it is going to be about consistency. And we had a very simple design language when we started, and it was the Albion patch and it was the Albion line, and those were the kind of the rules we stuck to. And people like Rhiannon and people like Graham as well have been like instrumental, I think, in bringing that on. And the design language is quite subtle, but I think, like Charlie said, we want these products to be able to be worn season after season. And I think even though we don't often show these products together, actually, when you see people wearing Albion products from over the years together, they should still tend to work quite well. Like, hopefully you were talking about at the start, your two-tone jersey, you could still wear that, I hope, today with, a new Albion Ranger.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have sort of pieces from a few years ago when I started following you to, I think, some stuff I bought more recently, and it all sort of works together. It's usually my kind of go-to on a long, hard ride. And I love that kind of timeless feel of it, because there's too many jerseys in my closet with at the time was a great design, and now feels like as someone who hosts a fashion oriented cycling podcast, I don't want to be seen out on the road, because I think enough people in Toronto know who I am, and I gotta save some face.
On that note, do you guys have like just kind of timeless approach? Do you have like kind of concrete plan or vision for what's next for Albion, or where you want to take it?
Where we are today and where we want to be in 24 months, that's pretty clear in our minds. And then beyond that, there's all sorts of things that we could do. I think, as you've probably seen from this winter, before this winter, we essentially had, our all road range. And then, I mean, last year we did one Zoa jacket to sort of test the market, as we said. But now that, we built that out into a range, and we're going to be bringing out another range next year, which we won't talk too much about now. But the ambition is really to be able to, from the moment you get up in the morning till the moment you go to bed at night, Albion should be able to provide you with clothing that is going to augment your riding experience, or just like your experience of being a cyclist and an outdoor person. So, read into that what you will, but yeah, it's really about giving people, the products to go out into the outdoors, stay there for longer. And there's lots of different ways in which clothing can do that. We're right at the start of that as a potential journey, but it's quite exciting.
I think as well, like we keep on alluding back to, we talk about helping people stay outside for longer. That's the North Star. That's where, when we're designing products or coming up with ideas, that leads a lot of it. But also the way people ride bikes and the way people travel outdoors is going to change massively over the next 10 years. And I think, a big job for us is positioning ourselves in a way where people can allow Albion to help them do that. Like, it's not necessarily, I think, maybe it is a role for a cycling brand. It certainly is, for bicycle manufacturers to kind of dictate that journey. But for us, I think we're just quite excited about where it's heading more generally. More people are using bikes to travel. There's never been a greater need to do that. And, if we can help play a role in people's lives so they've got the equipment and the clothing to help them do that in all aspects of their lives, then we're really, really excited by that. And it does, like Charlie says, like to us at the moment, maybe it's naive, but it kind of does feel limitless, because it's only going to happen more. And, we're only going to be riding bikes in different ways, which is really exciting. I think it's, at the moment, we're helping a very finite amount of people spend, more time outdoors. And I think, the opportunity is to help a lot more people do that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I mean, I like I said, seeing those like products beyond just like the kit, the kind of standard kit stuff definitely makes me want to expand what I might do on the bike. Even talking to you guys now, I'm like, fuck, I need to do some like epic British cycling adventure now, and like
I mean, we'll have to get even more Albion kit, Warren, because they said tested for harsh British weathers. But I've been to England and I love it, but that ain't Canada. So we'll put some Albion stuff to the test. Warren's got the insulated gilet, and he's pulled it out on some cold Canadian mornings, and it's done well. So we'll get some more cold weather stuff, and we'll let you know how well it tests to a Canadian February.
That sounds great. And to be honest with you, just as a bit of a sort of an aside, I mean, a big thing with the British conditions was, we get all 4 seasons in this country, sometimes 3 in a day, and whilst it doesn't get as crazy cold as some places, that it gets cold enough that you would think about, or you probably shouldn't even go out riding. So our feeling was basically, if we can make clothes that work for British conditions, then they're going to work most places in the world, right? Because we get, we can have warm summers. I know a lot of people think we don't have those, but we get the odd day in summer where it is really, really hot, right through to cold winters. And I think it's that combination of lots of weather and also the type of riding we're doing, which is, if you are out all day or multiple days, the weather can change, so things that are lightweight and packable, but are also really warm and breathable, these are all really useful things to have from gear, which if we were a different type of brand that was only clothing people for the sort of 2-hour cafe ride, we wouldn't even be thinking about.
Yeah, isn't that I feel like it was a joke about London where there's something, if you don't like London's weather, just wait an hour.
Yeah, literally. I think for the UK in general, that's probably not a bad rule.
All right, so I think we're just gonna wrap up with the rapid fire questions now, if you guys are good with that. As our listeners may remember, we like to end all of our interviews with a couple rapid fire questions. So I'll just ask them, and you can give a really short answer, and maybe explain your decision. You don't necessarily have to, but yeah. Carbon or steel?
Carbon, steel.
Steel for me, yeah.
Nice.
I've got a lovely steel skylight, so I'm going to bang the drum for them today.
And I've got a Pinarello Dogma, so I'm going to bang the drum for them.
We're very different in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I ride steel. Warren has an aluminum, and a steel cross bike. So we're this podcast in general with our other host Alex, who's away right now, is pretty much all metal focused. So
down with the metal. I've got a winter bike which is titanium, which I ride for half the year, and I love it. So kind of both, but I'm going to represent carbon.
This question's going to be pretty stupid after all our talking about riding outdoors, but ride outside in the winter or Zwift?
Zwift.
Yeah, also Zwift, just sitting indoors, heating on.
No. To be honest, neither of I don't think we've ever used Zwift. And fair play to anyone who wants to use Zwift, but yeah, I think the best thing about cycling is doing it outdoors. There are better video games than Zwift, in my opinion.
White or black shoes?
White.
Black for me.
White or black socks?
White, unless it's wet, in which case black.
But with the white shoes?
Yeah, with the white shoes.
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean, we could throw because the Albion socks are what I mean. I'm really gushing over you guys. I think everyone's gonna think you paid us, but they didn't. But the Albion socks are one of my favorite, and they also go with that slate gray, which is beautiful. So we could throw in a third option: white, black, or gray.
White, unless it's raining, then black or gray, depending on what else I was wearing.
Boas or laces on your shoes?
Boas.
I think there should be more boas on other things. I want to put boas
on jackets,
everywhere.
Black pudding or Yorkshire pudding?
Good question.
Can I let you into secret? I've never eaten black pudding.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm British sort of by ancestry, and I grew up with my Scottish grandmother eating black pudding all the time, and I regretted every bite.
Yeah, I think someone informed me really early on that it was just pig's blood, and I was just like, well, why would you eat that? And I just never have had it. Yorkshire puddings are really good though.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely Yorkshire pudding for me.
Black pudding for breakfast, Yorkshire pudding for lunch.
English breakfast or Irish breakfast?
That's a really good question, actually.
What is an Irish breakfast?
So it would always be English breakfast normally for me, but actually when I've been to Ireland, the Irish just do breakfast so well. They do white and black pudding. It's Irish eggs. I'm tempted to say Irish breakfast.
No, English breakfast.
We go to the cafe a lot for lunch around here, so it's English.
English breakfast for lunch. How about that?
All right, one more, tea or coffee?
Tea.
Coffee. I am a coffee man, I have to say.
All right, and last question. It's less of a rapid fire, but best place you've ever ridden anywhere?
Wales. I'm going to say Wales because honestly, it's where Albion was started. There's just like so much good riding there. Like I've been very lucky to ride in some amazing places, but in the interest of genuinely beating the drum for British riding, like it's an unsung hero of worldwide riding. If any cyclist of any ability would have a mind-blowing experience riding in Wales.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're 100% agreed on that. And we've done a serious amount of riding in Wales and a lot of work in Wales with Albion. And I was lucky enough to ride through the whole of Wales this summer. And it was. Am I allowed to say it was a spiritual experience? It's Wales every time.
And yeah, just a little plug. So we've got 2 films which will be coming out in the first bit of next year. The dates are still TBC. Both about riding in Wales. One is about an area called the Cambrian Mountains, which is where like the Albion story began, and then the other one is part 2 of day tripping. So I don't know if you guys have seen the day tripping film on our site.
Yeah.
But we did another one at the end of the summer. It's called Wales in a Day, and we ride the length of Wales in a day, and so that's going to be coming out soon as well. So yeah, lots of Wales propaganda for the Welsh tourist board. So.
I do really want to implore our listeners to go to their website and check out their films. I've watched, I think, pretty much all of them, and rewatch many, especially, for entertainment, but also looking for, a kind of spark of motivation to ride. And it's really beautifully done. And it's not just to showcase their product. It's also to sort of showcase the beauty of cycling and the beauty of the UK. So anyone who hasn't checked it out, go to their website, albioncycling.com, and check out their films. They're really amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Yeah, I mean, Canada next. We haven't been kind of far afield in a very long time now, with obviously everything that's been going on. But there are definitely plans for the Canadian chapter.
And yeah, I would also just add you can follow them on Instagram at Albion Cycling as well, which also gives you a nice look at a lot of these great visuals we've been trying to describe in audio form. And yeah, that's really it. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. It's been a great conversation. I feel like really learned more about the ethos of your brand and what you're about.
Yeah, and thank you for having us again. Yeah, it's been great. We'll be sure to try and spread the word. And yeah, it's been great talking to you guys. Keep tearing into brands.
Just not yours.
We're fair game. So
yeah. If you do something we don't like, we'll be honest about it.
I'm going to get all the Café du Cycliste fans coming off. I like Café du Cycliste, by the way. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I thought you quite like them too, actually.
Thanks so much, guys. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to our next segment, Into the Canal, where we take an item, a trend, anything from the world of cycling that we don't like, and we throw it in the Lachine Canal. Warren, what do you got for us this week?
Given our discussion about those no-bull shoes, it's obviously getting to be trainer season in our part of the world. The snow has come, sadly, kind of early in Canada. And anyway, so I've just dipped my toes back into Zwift in the last week, and it just reminded me that I think we've already said like all Zwift kits are terrible, but you still want to try to look as good as possible when you're on Zwift. And I forget this, and then I'm reminded every winter that their sock meter is terrible. And so what that is it lets you decide your sock length. So I think it goes from like no-show socks to like just barely visible socks. And then they have these 2 other levels. And there's like a mid-level that looks like, when you get to it, it looks like it's like 4 inches long, or the equivalent of 4 inches long socks. So it's not long enough. But then if you go to the max, which is the last adjustment you can make, they look like compression socks. So you basically can't have good looking sock length on Zwift. It's either not long enough or too long, or, try socks, but you shouldn't be doing that anyway. But there's like 2 levels that are acceptable to pick between. And I struggle with it because like the compression socks just look terrible, but then the other ones they're not quite long enough. So I'm going to throw the sock meter in the canal, and they need to send their developers in to like dive down, grab it, fix it, and just let us get like that 6-inch sock height.
Completely agreed. Noticed this before. When I started getting into Zwift, I would just kind of keep jumping between those two ones you're talking about. Never felt right. Very surprised at this because Zwift has done a lot of good things, trying to make the game seem as realistic as possible, and having not the correct sock length is a real faux pas.
I agree, and that's probably why my FTP is terrible on Zwift, is because I can't get the right sock height, and it's really impeding my performance on
Only it's only 430 your FTP.
I'm actually at about 450 right now. I was higher before I had a baby, but
Yeah.
yeah, I really went down recently,
Okay.
so pretty disappointing. Tony, what do you got in the Canal this week?
I got nothing in the Canal. Everything is perfect. Cycling's at its peak. Nothing's gone wrong. There's no complaints, and I'll wait till the dip starts happening. But right now, we are at perfect cycling.
We're in the golden age of cycling, so we have positive Tony this week. That's good to
Wow.
It's good to hear. Okay, so I'll do my Canal item then this week. So a couple of things actually. There's lots going on. So Australian cyclist who rides for Ineos, Cameron Worth, he posted a really interesting picture on Instagram recently. It was him training, and there was really a lot to unpack here. So first of all, he posted a picture of himself. He's standing, kind of holding his bike in front of him. So he's wearing the Ineos kit, obviously with a Pinarello Dogma. I think Ineos has a deal with Pinarello until 2025 or something like that. But the Ineos kit that he's wearing, I've actually never seen it before. So Ineos, we're used to seeing their black and red kit that they wear on most of the races. This one is a bright orange kit, sort of like if it's hunting season, people want to wear the high visibility stuff. So he's wearing that kind of bright orange kit, and then it says Grenadiers on the front, which is the other sponsor of Ineos Grenadiers. He's holding his Pinarello Dogma, but it's a non-drive side photo of the Pinarello Dogma. So right there, that's in the Canal. Non-drive side photos are in the Canal. But if you zoom in actually on the crank and on the crank arms more specifically, again, you're not seeing it from the front, so it's hard to tell, but it looks like the SRAM red logo that you see on the crank arms there, which had me wondering, wait, is Ineos going to SRAM in 2022 as their drivetrain sponsor? Because I think so far there was only Movistar and Trek that had SRAM as their sponsor. And there's this very famous video, I think it's of Bauke Mollema from several years ago, where his chain just keeps dropping, and at some point he says "fucking SRAM" really loud, and it's become a meme on the internet. I have used SRAM on one of my bikes. I am very anti SRAM as a result. I've had a lot of problems. So when I saw that Ineos, the team of marginal gains, where you're using special pillows to get an extra 30 seconds of sleep to gain a third of a watt on the climb, when I saw that they are potentially using SRAM, and again, this hasn't been confirmed from what I can tell, that is the antithesis of marginal gains. Essentially, this is marginal losses. And so if that's the case, I have to throw Ineos into the Canal, because that's a very odd decision from them.
It's more than a marginal loss, I think, if you're going with SRAM, in my opinion. But also, yeah, if they are switching, I hope nobody in the Grand Tours is planning on using a front derailleur at any point. Good luck shifting into your little ring.
Well, it could be the sign that pros are going to one by for
Maybe.
road cycling going forward. But anyway, so three things: orange kit in the Canal, non-drive side photo in the Canal, SRAM in the Canal.
I just want to make sure our listeners are aware we're talking World Tour teams. We know that
Yeah.
Aqua Blue did the failed one by experiment with the 3T bike, and maybe hopefully we'd like to have Adam Blythe on one day as sort of cycling's resident style expert, pro cycling's resident style expert. And he can talk about it. Maybe he can be candid about how awful it was.
I don't agree with orange kit in the Canal. Ineos orange kit, sure, but as a owner of a nice orange jersey, I don't agree with you there. But yeah, the Ineos orange kit, no.
I like orange as a color as well.
Well, for me, it's in the Canal. Okay, that's it for another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Thank you very much to Charlie Stewart and Jack Hauker from Albion for coming on the podcast to tell us about their brand, the history of the brand. So we're very happy to have been able to interview them. So thanks, guys, for coming on. Congratulations to MJ for winning the peppermint giveaway with your story on how to stay warm, or actually on how you stayed warm at some point in your cycling career. Thanks to all our listeners. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. Send us emails, cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. And please send us your bikes to review. I know this is the second episode in a row that I say that we'll get back to it, but we've just had a lot of good content with interviews. So we haven't really had time to do the We Rate Your Bike for Free segment, but we will for sure get back to it. So please keep sending us your bikes, cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone, and we will be back shortly with more Cycling Fashion Week content. Take care.